What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Onyx Report, Black Masculinist news for the day. This was a piece that was sent to me by my father. Shout out to my father. He shared it with me, and I was kind of blown away. I thought I would share it with y'all. This comes off of a piece off The Guardian, recently put together. Hold on. There we go. Came out actually today, the 19th. And deals with one B.B. King. Why don't we check this out together? Here we go. All right. So, as you can see, title from The Guardian: Father to 15 children. Were any of the blues star B.B. King's offspring his? New biography says paternity would have been impossible for the musician because he was sterile due to illness and an accident. Man. Right? So it reads, B.B. King was born into poverty in Jim Crow, Mississippi, and raised on a cotton plantation before becoming a street busker, then finding fame and fortune as a guitarist, singer, and songwriter. But the King of the Blues also had a far from conventional private life, fathering 15 children, many of whom reportedly squabbled over his multi-million-dollar estate after his death in 2015. But they could not have been his biological children because he was sterile due to illness and an accident, a forthcoming biography claims. Its author, Daniel DeVries, I may have mispronounced his name, a Pulitzer Prize winner, told The Observer, "The people in his inner circle told me over and over again that they didn't believe he had any biological children. I was told this by his loved ones and even his doctor." These witnesses included ex-wife Sue, a nephew, and the singer's doctor, all of whom told the writer that the 15 children could not have been King's. They told him that King's ability to have children had been affected by a childhood bout of the mumps, causing an attendant swelling of his testicles, which were also gored by a ram on a farm. God damn. While further damage was caused by a sexually transmitted disease contracted in his late teens. DeVries said by the end of BB's second marriage, he had fathered no children in 16 years of wedlock. Both of his wives had children with other partners. He added that BB wanted a family, having lost his infant brother and mother at a young age. BB's prolific paternity became a part of his virile bluesman legend, something to brag about in hundreds of interviews to come, even if it probably wasn't true. Right? Rolling Stone's list of legendary pop acts that wouldn't exist without B.B. King range from Jimi Hendrix to Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, with Eric Clapton describing him as the most important artist the blues has ever produced. Research into his children will feature in the biography titled King of the Blues: The Rise and Reign of B.B. King, published by Grove Press UK on October 14th. DeVries writes, in later years, BB would weave an elaborate fiction of fatherhood, acknowledging his low sperm count even as he claimed to have sired several children. The truth that BB probably never stood a chance to father children remained a closely guarded secret to the end. He details King's accident, age 12, while playing with a ram. When the boy bent over, the ram saw his moment and charged. A horn smashed into King's testicles. No doctor could be found, and the mangled organs were left to mend on their own. Man, it's the realities of Black life, especially at that time. But King's close friend Charles Sawyer told The Observer, BB told me about his negative fertility test during his second marriage. In 2008, he told me nowadays it would be easy to test for paternity, but we didn't know about that back then. He said, I have accepted these children and now they are my family. I would never think to test that now. Also, he left strict instructions that there was to be no DNA testing upon his death. King, whose most famous songs include The Haunting, The Thrill Is Gone, once likened the blues to a problem child that you may have had in your family, but who was loved all the same. He helped the children financially, but it was a troubled relationship. DeVries writes that in 1996, King hosted a family reunion in an effort to stop them fighting. A few of BB's children had arrived with a list of other children they wanted him to disown. They challenged him to draw a line between the real children and the pretenders. At a sprawling family dinner, BB confronted them. Since there seems to be an issue, with some of y'all over who is and who's not. He said, I'd like to do a DNA test if you all agree. He continued, the room fell to a hush. BB explained that he would not require any of his children to prove their parentage. He would provide for them in any case. But BB was not going to allow them to turn on each other. So if you want to do a DNA test, he said, that's fine with me. No one did. The insurrection was over. Now, too much of the time, we find ourselves in a situation where, Black men's perceived value seems to be in our death, especially if that death leads to a lawsuit or a life insurance claim. But short of that, our value tends to be pretty problematic. Now, with a celebrity, obviously that's a little bit different, but much of the time, it's where we find ourselves. So it continues. Sawyer published BB's authorized biography in 1980, and he will release hundreds of his photos in BB King from Indianola to Icon to be published next month. Having read DeVise's biography, he said, it's nothing short of extraordinary. But Ronald LeBow, manager of BB King Music Company on behalf of the estate and the family, said, the family is not in support of this unauthorized biography. We wish to make no comment related to this publication. Right? So that's what we're dealing with. That's what we're dealing with. So this man, who clearly saw the value of family and invested in it, took ownership, or responsibility, I should say, for children that he likely knew weren't his. Now, it doesn't say if his wives misrepresented themselves. Did they cheat and claim they were his children? Or did they have an understanding? Did they have a relationship with other men that he knew of? I can't say. I've not been a BB King aficionado. I just found this story interesting. Some of you out there may know a lot more. Please feel free to comment about what you may know. So the nature of his relationships, I'm not completely clear about, and how much the wives knew and didn't know. I don't know. But it's interesting on a number of different levels. And shout out to one of my supporters, Brother Adam Migtow, made an interesting point when I posted this a little earlier about the need for DNA testing. And it's something that he contributed to the Black male political agenda. It is point one, in fact. It is, because there's quite a few different points on the agenda that we put forth. In the first one, point 1B, is dealing with mandatory paternity testing at birth. And this was one I believe was contributed by Mr. Migtow. And it reads, let me see. I can't pull it up. Prior to signing the birth certificate, newborn children should be given a DNA test to assure the parentage of the father, thus avoiding men being unjustly responsible for supporting children under false pretenses. Then we later added an addendum. Once determined that the father has been misled regarding the child's parentage, no matter how long it's been, he should be excused from both the birth certificate and child support. The exploited party should be subject to legally sanctioned reimbursement from the mother, the biological father, and the relevant city, state, federal government. Okay? This is in response. Now, so obviously, when you look at what King went through, there's still a lot we don't know. So it's hard to make assertions about his role and what he knew. He knew, that these were likely not his children. And it seemed like in that threat to the family at the reunion, he was willing to expose all of them to that reality if they all agreed to a DNA test. And it seems to me that many of the children probably knew that they weren't related to him because in a situation like that, if I know 100% that I'm your child and you threaten to do a DNA to cut off people who aren't, I don't have no problem saying do it. But clearly that wasn't the case. One of the things I'm curious about, though, are the structures of these different families that he's had. Because you guys know I've been talking about what I call the gynopatesto family structure, which is basically the reason I don't call it matriarchal. We focus it, as a gynocracy, is because it's not necessarily mother-centered, it's female-centered. So in each household, the female is the head of the house, right? She may have several kids, but, she doesn't have to be married at all. She doesn't, she still runs the household. And in many ways, that's because the state has been able to replace Black men. And this has allowed women to run, small and large households independent of those men. In B.B. King's situation, after his death, I'm curious to know if his past relationships with various wives that he had, if those women remarried or if they stayed single and not only benefited off of, say, government resources, but King's resources directly. And what we tend to find is when those resources are there, many women, especially in the Black community, tend to not marry, to not risk, this issue of having another man in a position of potential authority in any kind of way. So that male is replaced by resources extended from other spaces. And in this context, we're talking about King. So I'm curious to know what the family structure is. Now, if you look at the thumbnail for this video, you see a whole bunch of women. Matter of fact, 6 of them, right? Now, he has 15 kids. I'm sure some are male, or at least 15 who, are identified as his children legally. But the ones that seem to be the most outspoken of are women, apparently. Looking for a certain type of presence. So anyway, that's one dimension of it. The other is it reminds me of a play that I show to my students every year, A Raisin in the Sun. And A Raisin in the Sun is, you can find it on YouTube. There's a number of different iterations. It's a very popular live performance play, where you can find James Earl Jones. You can find a number of different people playing these various characters. Oh goodness, they're escaping me at the moment. But there are a number you can find. The most recent from a few years ago, you even have P. Diddy, playing in it as one of the titular characters. But here's the thing. That story is about a family who is waiting on an insurance check because the patriarch of the family has died. They're waiting on a life insurance check. And that story is so poignant, especially in relation to B.B. King, because in it, story starts after the father has died. You don't even see his face. You don't hear his voice. People talk about him in the story, but you don't actually get to hear him, because in many ways he's persona non grata. He's not relevant. It's the resources that his life translated into that has relevance. And when those resources are misspent or stolen or disappear, the question can be raised: what is the value of a man's life? If that piece of paper is not there, if that check that everybody's waiting on burns up, disappears, is stolen, whatever, does a man's life still have value? Well, with B.B. King, the question is consistently coming up because you have a large number of people that are fighting over his estate. What is his value? And if you find that he's actually none of their fathers, then what? Would they stop fighting for it? Doubtful. But as my father posed the question, he said, what does this say about the women in his life? Now, all of that depends on how much was agreed upon beforehand, how much, everybody knew. But if you did have women that misrepresented their pregnancies to him, that would say a lot. I can't say if that occurred. I don't know. But I know if it did, it would be terribly sad and frustrating all at the same time. Yeah. I don't know. I'd be curious to know if there are any males in the family that are able to follow in their father's footsteps. I'd be curious to know that. I'd be curious to know if any of those resources that somebody is going to get at some point be dedicated to family that want to continue in the footsteps of King as a blues artist. I have no idea. But I am interested to hear your thoughts on this, because this is a revelation in and of itself, if true. And the details of it need to come out, because it says a lot, in my opinion, on the perception of Black men, the perception of their utility and their role, even when they have resources, even when they have status, even when they have wealth. If we know men have a tendency to be reduced to their, material value, does it matter if you become a multimillionaire? I don't know, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it. So please share. Hope you guys are well. Seeing you soon. Peace.